It has been more than 60 years since Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea first aired, and the actors who brought it to life went on to experience marriages, scandals, heartbreaks, and transformations that no one could have predicted. Did you know that one of the show's leading actors lost his wife, and that just a few months after her death, he followed her, never having recovered from the grief? Did you know that another actor literally walked off the set to go fight in Vietnam? And when he came back alive, he found that his role had long been filled by someone else? Did you know that one member of the legendary submarine Seaview's crew died while reading a script, the pages still in his hands, his heart stopping without warning? These men embodied heroism, loyalty, and courage on screen. But off camera, their lives were filled with pain, loss, and unexpected turns of fate. Today we tell the story of each of them, then and now. Buckle up, because the story of the Seaview crew turned out to be far more gripping than any episode of the show. Number 1. Del Monroe as Seaman Kowalski. Del Monroe is the only actor in the history of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea to appear in both the 1961 feature film and every single episode of the television series, without exception. That is a remarkable distinction. Out of more than 100 episodes, he missed not one. Kowalski became the face of the ordinary sailor, dependable, tough, and alive. Del Monroe was born on April 7, 1932, in Santa Barbara, California. When the series launched in 1964, he was 32 years old. He grew up in the very city that the show used as the fictional home of the Nelson Institute of Marine Research. Monroe considered this coincidence fateful his entire life, as if the role had been written for him. After his military service, he enrolled in the famed Pasadena Playhouse, where he appeared in more than 30 productions. That is where his real acting education began. His path into film started in a genuinely comic fashion. His earliest credits were cheap exploitation B-movies, and it was only a phone call from Irwin Allen that changed everything. On the set of the 1961 film, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, a legendary incident occurred. Monroe spotted what seemed to him a glaring prop error, and had the nerve to point it out to the producer himself. Most actors in his position would have stayed quiet, but Allen was not offended. He was impressed. That moment made Monroe indispensable. Throughout all 4 years of production, Monroe appeared in 98 episodes, alongside monsters, spies, aliens, and nuclear threats. He said he loved every single episode, no matter how far-fetched the plot. Yet after the show ended, fate was merciless. No comparable role ever came. Kowalski remained both his finest hour and his creative ceiling. Monroe took a job on the night shift at the Anheuser-Busch plant in Van Nuys, California, and never told his co-workers about his past in Hollywood. In his later years, he quietly continued picking up small parts: Ms. Marvel, The Incredible Hulk, The Rockford Files. But audiences barely noticed. Del Monroe died on June 5, 2009, in Burbank, California, of leukemia. He was 77 years old. It was a quiet exit for a man the Navy had adored and Hollywood had never properly recognized. Kowalski always stood at the sonar, and even when the light in the control room went out for good, he stayed at his post until the very end. Number 2, Paul Trinka as Seaman Patterson. Paul Trinka was never officially listed as a regular. He had no name chair on set, no contract for a permanent role. But Patterson became one of the most vivid and memorable men aboard the Seaview, thanks to an actor whose charisma no producer could contain. Paul Francis Trinka was born on January 26, 1932, in Blairsville, Pennsylvania. When the series began, he was 32. He served in the Army during the Korean War, then in the Air Force, before dedicating himself to acting. He studied at Los Angeles City College and performed in theaters in New York and California. His breakthrough came through a role in Russ Meyer's notorious exploitation film, Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill, 1965, a picture that later became a cult classic. After that, Irwin Allen noticed Trinka and brought him aboard the Seaview. On set, a now famous incident occurred. Noticing that every other actor had a personalized chair bearing their name while he had none, Trinka asked the props department to make him one. Word reached Irwin Allen, who deliberately cut Patterson out of the next several episodes as punishment. Patterson simply vanished from the screen without explanation. When another actor, Alan Hunt, left to serve in Vietnam, Some of his screen time was reassigned to Trinka, and Patterson finally got storylines of his own. He even acquired a small fan club, a group of young women from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, whose motto was, "Don't be a fink, watch Paul Trinka." Alongside his acting, Trinka worked as maitre d' at the Aware Inn, a fashionable Los Angeles health food restaurant that was a genuine institution of the hippie era. After the show ended, he kept taking small parts, traveled the world, and rode motorcycles. Life seemed full and bright. Then it ended without warning. Paul Trinka died on December 28, 1973, in Los Angeles of brain cancer. He was just 41. No one saw it coming. Patterson always stood at the sonar, calm, reliable, unchanging. Real life turned out to be far crueler than any monster from the ocean depths. Henry Kulky, as Chief Curly Jones. Henry Kulky is a man whose biography sounds like a Hollywood screenplay. A former professional wrestler, South American judo champion, World War II veteran, and an actor whom Hollywood loved for his honesty and physical power. He died suddenly, a script for an upcoming episode of Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea still in his hands. Henry Kulakovich, that was his real name, was born on August 11, 1911, in Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. When the series premiered in 1964, he was 53. In his youth, he took up boxing, then switched to wrestling, competing across Argentina and throughout South America under the nickname Bomber Kulkovich. By some accounts, he won 172 matches out of 175. He also became the continent's judo champion. It was fellow wrestler Mike Mazurki who introduced him to the movies. And so, a long career as a character actor began. Kulky became the face of the sturdy, big-hearted military man. His look, broad shoulders, flattened nose, dimpled cheeks, worked perfectly for sergeants, boatswain's mates, and gentle giants. He appeared in more than 500 films and television programs. From 1953 to 1958, he played Otto Schmidlapp on the popular sitcom The Life of Riley, and from 1959 to 1962, he was Chief Bronsky on Hennessy. Military roles suited him especially well. During World War II, he had served as a boatswain's mate in the United States Navy himself. He knew these men from the inside. The role of Chief Curly Jones in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was his last. On February 12, 1965, in Oceanside, California, Henry Kulky died of a heart attack while working on a script. He was only 53, a man who had defeated hundreds of opponents in the ring, who had swept South America in wrestling competitions, who seemed capable of standing up to anything, and his heart stopped at a desk. His death was so unexpected that the show's producers were at a loss for several episodes to explain where Chief Jones had gone. Another character took his place, but no one ever took Henry Kulky's place in television history. Arch Whiting as Sparks the radio operator. He was simply called Sparks, no first name, no last name, just a call sign. Arch Whiting appeared on screen again and again, receiving signals from the depths of the ocean, and his unflappable composure became part of the show's DNA. Off camera, however, this man's life had been considerably more varied than anyone might have guessed. Harold Joseph Archambault, that was Arch Whiting's real name, was born on September 29, 1936, in Larchmont, New York. When the series launched in 1964, he was 27. He received his education at the elite Dwight School in New York City and at Florida Southern College. His career began in a thoroughly unexpected way. As an associate producer on the popular variety program, The Ed Sullivan Show, in the 1950s. Knowing and understanding television from the inside would prove an invaluable foundation for an acting career. In parallel, he studied acting under the legendary Sanford Meisner, one of America's foremost masters of the Stanislavski method. In 1964, Whiting took on the role of Sparks, the Seaview's quiet, professional, indispensable radio operator. He appeared in 41 episodes, including both the first and the last. His character was minimalist, but immediately recognizable. It was always Sparks who first received distress signals from the outside world. Alongside his work on the series, Whiting appeared in a memorable episode of Star Trek 1967, in a small role as an assistant engineer. He also appeared in Mannix, The Fugitive, Land of the Giants, and other iconic shows of the 1960s and 70s. After the show ended, Whiting found a new calling. From 1974 to 1975, he co-created the family adventure series Run, Joe, Run for NBC, in which he also played the lead role of Sergeant William Corey. He then stepped back from the screen and relocated to Black Mountain, North Carolina, a small, quiet town in the foothills of the Appalachians. He spent his final years there in seclusion. Arch Whiting died on May 7, 2007, in Black Mountain. He was 70. A man who spent years in a submarine's radio room, receiving signals from around the world, chose silence at the end. Sometimes the most eloquent answer is no answer at all. Richard Bull as the ship's doctor. Richard Bull came to the series almost by accident, just as he had come to acting itself. He never dreamed of movies. He wanted a career in music. But one day a friend dragged him to a class at a theater school, and life changed forever. And then that life gave him something most actors can only dream of, a role that outlasted decades. Richard William Bull was born on June 26, 1924, in Zion, Illinois. When Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea launched in 1965, he was around 40. He began his acting career at the renowned Goodman Theater in Chicago. 3 years of study were interrupted by military service. He worked as a radio operator in the United States Army Air Forces. After his discharge in 1946, he returned to the stage. At the Goodman, he met a young actress named Barbara Collentine, and they married in 1948, beginning a partnership that would last more than 65 years. A small role in the epic film The Greatest Story Ever Told, 1965, opened many doors, as he himself put it. Director George Stevens noticed him and invited him to his next project. Around the same time, Bull was cast as the ship's doctor in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, appearing in 27 episodes alongside Richard Basehart. But his greatest role was still to come. A chance meeting with Michael Landon on the set of Bonanza led to Bull being invited onto Little House on the Prairie, where from 1974 to 1983, he played the patient, even-handed storekeeper Nels Olson in 147 episodes. It was a role he had never sought, and one that made him a beloved figure for several generations of viewers. In their later years, Richard and Barbara Bull moved back from Los Angeles to Chicago, and in 2012, the couple settled into the Motion, Picture and Television Fund Home, a specialized care facility for Hollywood veterans. Richard Bull died on February 3, 2014, in Calabasas, California, of pneumonia. He was 89. To the end, he remained by Barbara's side, the woman with whom he had spent nearly 7 decades. The Seaview's ship's doctor never abandoned his patients, and the man behind that character never did either. Alan Hunt as Seaman. Stu Riley. The story of Alan Hunt is the story of how a real war turned out to be stronger than a television career. He left the Seaview for Vietnam, and when he came back, the submarine had long since sailed into history. Alan Hunt was born on February 12, 1945, in California. When he joined the series in its second season, 1965-1966, he was just 20, young, tall, and open-faced. He was a perfect fit for the role of the cool young sailor, designed to draw in a younger audience. Hunt trained at the Pasadena Playhouse, UCLA, the American Conservatory Theater, and the Seattle Repertory Theater. Before Voyage, he had already appeared regularly on The Donna Reed Show, as a friend of the lead character's daughter, and in small parts on Gunsmoke and Perry Mason. Irwin Allen was initially reluctant to cast him. Hunt was taller than Richard Basehart, and the producer disliked anyone towering over his leading man on screen. But the young actor's charisma won out. Stu Riley became a notable presence in the second season. Then Vietnam arrived. Understanding that the draft was inevitable, Hunt voluntarily enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, without waiting to be called up. Irwin Allen personally promised to hold the role of Stu Riley for him until he returned. It was a genuine gentleman's agreement. Hunt served. He helped organize USO shows for the troops, wrote original scripts, and staged performances right in the combat zone. When he finally returned, the series had ended. Allen's promise was impossible to keep. The train had left the station. Hunt continued his career in theater and television, appeared in several seasons of General Hospital, worked as a news anchor for a CBS affiliate in Albuquerque, and acted in later shows, The Love Boat, The Next Wave, Charmed. For several years, he ran a visual and performing arts program at Oak Park High School in California. As of 2026, Alan Hunt is 81. He is alive and well, and remains one of the very few surviving members of the Seaview crew. Stu Riley went to war and came back. That perhaps is the truest kind of heroism. Terry Becker as Chief Petty Officer Francis Sharkey. Terry Becker came to the series to fill a void left by death. That is always a particular situation, to take the place of someone no longer there. He managed it. More than that, he created a character who became one of the most beloved aboard the Seaview. Solomon Becker, his real name, was born on August 5, 1921, in New York City. When he joined the series in its second season, 1965, he was 43. He grew up in the Bronx and began working as an actor on television in the 1950s. Small parts in Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Perry Mason. In The Twilight Zone, he played Jaeger, a man falsely accused of murder, in an episode critics have called one of the most unsettling in the series' history. Becker had a gift for conveying desperation in a way that only comes from having lived through something truly difficult. Chief Sharkey became his finest hour as an actor. The Brooklyn accent, the blunt directness, the fatherly sternness toward young sailors. Becker played all of it with an authenticity that never felt manufactured. He appeared in 71 episodes. His character was brought in to replace Curly Jones after Henry Kulky's sudden death. Sharkey was rough on the outside and soft on the inside, the perfect tough but tender old hand that audiences immediately took to. After Voyage ended, Becker moved behind the camera and proved equally talented as a director. He received an Emmy Award for directing an episode of Room 222 in the 1969-1970 season. He then went on to direct landmark shows, including Mission, Impossible, Ma's H, The Brady Bunch, and The Mod Squad, a veritable pantheon of American television in the 1970s. In 1973, he co-founded a production company with actor Carroll O'Connor. Terry Becker died on December 30th, 2014, in Los Angeles. He was 93. He lived to a ripe old age, leaving his mark both in front of the camera and behind it. Chief Sharkey never gave up. Neither did Terry Becker. Robert Dowdell as Lieutenant Commander Chip Morton. Robert Dowdell appeared in every episode of the Seaview, except one. 109 out of 110. That is absolute dedication to a role. The irony is that Chip Morton, the submarine's executive officer, was almost never at the center of the action. He was as reliable as a compass and as invisible as gravity, and that was precisely where his strength lay. Robert Dowdell was born on March 10, 1932, in Park Ridge, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. When the series launched, he was 32. Before becoming an actor, he had worked as a pin setter at a Chicago bowling alley, a courier for the ABC network, a hunting guide in Mexico, and a railroad brakeman. This is not the biography of a Hollywood star. It is the biography of a real American from a working-class family. Then came service in the Army Corps of Engineers, followed by acting training under Win Hanman in New York. His first substantial role came in the Western series Stony Burke, 1962-1963, with Jack Lord, where Dowdell played his loyal companion. In Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, he became Captain Crane's right hand, the man who makes tactical decisions while others are in a panic. Morton was perfectly calibrated, not a gram of excess. Dowdell appeared in 109 of 110 episodes, and fans of the series have said it was he who gave the Seaview the feeling of genuine naval order. After the show ended, Dowdell continued working in theater and television, appeared in several more Irwin Allen productions, City Beneath the Sea, 1971, Land of the Giants. He retired in 1995. In his later years, Dowdell lived in Coldwater, Michigan, caring for stray cats in his neighborhood. His neighbors remembered him as a quiet gentleman who never boasted about his past. Robert Dowdell died on January 23, 2018, in Coldwater of natural causes. He was 85. His cousins shared that he was genuinely amazed that he had so many fans around the world, and that he cherished every letter and card he received. Chip Morton never sought the spotlight. He simply did his job. Robert Dowdell was exactly the same. Number 9. David Hedison as Captain Lee Crane. David Hedison is one of the very few actors who managed to play the same supporting character in 2 different James Bond films. with a gap of 16 years between them. That is a record. But before he became CIA agent Felix Leiter, he had already conquered the ocean depths as Captain Crane and endured a loss that very nearly broke him. Albert David Hedison Jr. was born on May 20th, 1927, in Providence, Rhode Island, into an Armenian-American family. When the series launched in 1964, he was 37. As early as age 14, after seeing Tyrone Power in Blood and Sand, he decided he would be an actor. After World War II, he served in the United States Navy. After the service, he attended Brown University, then went to New York, to the neighborhood playhouse to study under Sanford Meisner, and to the Actors Studio to study under Lee Strasberg. In 1957, he signed a contract with 20th Century Fox. His first major roles came in the war film The Enemy Below, 1957, and the cult science fiction horror The Fly, 1958. It was The Fly that made his name. The role of Captain Crane in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea was his crowning achievement on television. Hedison appeared in every episode, alongside Richard Basehart, forming the ideal pairing of captain and admiral. Crane was young, decisive, and unafraid to push back against those above him. There was something personal in that. Hedison himself knew how to stand his ground. His personal life was both happy and tragic. In 1968, he married Bridget Hedison. They had 2 daughters, Alexandra and Serena. Their marriage lasted 48 years, but on February 22, 2016, Bridget died of breast cancer. Hedison was devastated. He lived with that loss for 3 years. David Hedison died on July 18, 2019, at his home in Los Angeles. He was 92. To the very last, he remained the sole surviving member of the iconic trio, the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea series, The Enemy Below, and The Fly. The captain is always the last to leave the ship. David Hedison honored that duty to the end. 10. Mark Slade as Seaman Malone. Mark Slade is a man whose life story reads like a happy accident. He came to the Seaview not out of any love for the sea, but because a classmate fell ill one day. That chance substitution in a school drama club changed the entire course of his life. And when Hollywood opened its doors to him, an entire world turned out to be waiting on the other side, far beyond any submarine. Mark Van Blarcom Slade was born on May 1, 1939, in Salem, Massachusetts. When Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea premiered in 1964, he was 25. He grew up on the North Shore of Massachusetts, in a family whose roots stretched back, through his mother's side, to a passenger on the second Pilgrim ship to arrive at Plymouth in 1621. It is a remarkable historical detail that the actor himself always mentioned with pride. In 1956, he enrolled at Worcester Academy intending to become a painter. But when a classmate fell ill, Slade was offered the boy's part in a school production, and the theater bug bit him permanently. Soon he was studying at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, waiting tables at the legendary 21 Club to pay the bills. His first major successes came quickly: a Broadway debut in a production directed by Joshua Logan, the same show that launched Jane Fonda's career, followed by a role in Elia Kazan's acclaimed film Splendor in the Grass, 1961. Then Irwin Allen noticed the young, dark-haired actor and cast him in the feature film Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, 1961. His character died in that film, but Allen brought him back to the Seaview for the television series as Seaman Malone. Slade was one of the very few actors to appear in both versions, but the Seaview was only a springboard. In 1967, at 27, Slade landed the role that made him an international star, Billy Blue Cannon, in the Western series The High Chaparral, 1967-1971, the fair-haired, blue-eyed rancher's son. The show was a massive hit in Europe. Slade received Germany's Bambi Award, a Belgian Viewer Favorite Award, and the Bravo Auto. Fan mail came pouring in from around the world. The Navajo Nation honored him with lifetime honorary membership, in recognition of the respectful way their culture was portrayed. As of 2026, Mark Slade is 87. He lives in Northern California, paints, publishes novels, and maintains active social media accounts. Seaman Malone long ago came ashore, but the artist Slade is still at sea. Paul Carr as Seaman Casey Clark. Paul Carr knew how to be everywhere. He showed up in the most varied shows of his era, from Star Trek to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, from Days of Our Lives to the Rockford Files. He was a true journeyman master whom Hollywood constantly employed, and never quite made a star. Yet, in the history of television, he left a mark far deeper than many, whose names appeared in larger type on the credits. Paul Wallace Carr was born on January 31st, 1934, in New Orleans, Louisiana. When the series launched in 1964, he had just turned 30. He grew up in Monroe, a small town on the banks of the Mississippi, in a family headed by a publisher. As a teenager, he pursued acting and music simultaneously. He studied clarinet at the Juilliard School and drama at the American Theater Wing in New York. After a brief stint in the Marine Corps, he threw himself into professional theater, playing Haymon in Antigone, Jack in Tennessee, Williams's The Rose Tattoo, Hal Carter and William Ing's Picnic. It was a serious classical foundation. In 1964 to 1965, Carr appeared aboard the Seaview as Seaman Casey Clark, a taut, focused member of the crew. But the following year brought something that would write his name permanently into science fiction history. He played Lieutenant Lee Kelso in the pilot episode of Star Trek, Where No Man Has Gone Before, 1966. His character was psychokinetically strangled by a mutating navigator, which makes Paul Carr, technically, the first red shirt to die in the history of Star Trek. That alone is a priceless place in pop culture. Alongside this, he maintained a busy soap opera career. Dr. Bill Horton in the first season of Days of Our Lives, 1965, A Doctor in General Hospital, and The Doctors. Later in his career, Carr opened his own studio at a Los Angeles repertory theater, where he worked in both direction and production. He never found the one breakthrough star-making role, but he played hundreds of supporting ones that together added up to a distinguished career. Paul Carr died on February 17, 2006, in Los Angeles. He was 72, the first red shirt in Star Trek, one of the first fighters on the Seaview's crew, an actor everyone remembers, who never received the credit he deserved. The 12, Derek Lewis as Lieutenant O'Brien. The story of Derek Lewis begins with pure chance and unfolds as a lesson in how a single lucky call from an agent can change an entire career. He ended up on the Seaview because he showed up for a shoot, and the costume department couldn't find a sailor's uniform to fit him. They found an officer's uniform instead. And so a random guy with a couple of lines became a lieutenant. Derek Lewis was born on June 5, 1941. When the series launched in 1964, he was just 23. A native of the Philadelphia area, he had his first professional stage role at 15 and made his television debut in 1960 on The Loretta Young Show. Early in his career, he performed in classical Shakespeare theater in the San Fernando Valley and at the Sacramento Music Circus. Then came roles in The Twilight Zone, Route 66, My Three Sons, The Monkees. Lewis was clearly on the rise. On the pilot shoot for Voyage, that memorable incident took place. His agent sent him in for a single shooting day as an ordinary seaman, but the costume department couldn't fit him in an enlisted uniform and dressed him in officer's gear instead. He appeared on screen as a lieutenant. The role of O'Brien was already held by another actor, but when that actor left after the pilot, Lewis happened to run into Irwin Allen, and the producer, having just seen him in another show, offered him the permanent role on the spot. Lewis appeared as Lieutenant O'Brien in 8 episodes across the first and second seasons, modest in terms of volume, but keenly felt as a presence. Lewis held simultaneous membership in the Screen Actors Guild, the Television Union AFTRA, and the Musicians Union, a combination exceptionally rare in Hollywood. After the Seaview, Lewis developed his career both as an actor and in music. He is a professional pianist and singer. In 1987, he worked as a news anchor for a CBS affiliate in Albuquerque. In the 2000s, he settled in Palm Springs, California, where he became a heart of the local theater scene. For more than a decade, he performed with a jazz trio at Tropicole, an elegant restaurant in the heart of the desert. As of 2026, Derek Lewis is 84. He still performs on stage and calls every night in front of an audience dream work. Lieutenant O'Brien always kept his watch. Derek Lewis keeps it to this day. 13. Richard Basehart as Admiral Nelson. This man recited poetry at the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. The next day, his first stroke struck. Richard Basehart lived a life filled with triumphs and losses that had shadowed him from his earliest days in the profession. And he left as he had lived, at the most unexpected moment, with work still unfinished. John Richard Basehart was born on August 31st, 1914, in Zanesville, Ohio. When the series launched in 1964, he had just turned 50. His mother died in childbirth, and he spent his childhood in orphanages. His father, the editor of a local newspaper, put the boy to work as a reporter, but a scandal surrounding one of his stories forced Richard to leave the newsroom and turn to acting. He made his Broadway debut in 1938. In 1945, he was named the New York Drama Critic's Most Promising Young Actor of the Year. In film, he became a master of roles with a hidden dimension, a killer in the film noir He Walked by Night, 1948, the acrobat The Fool in Fellini's masterpiece La Strada, 1954, Ishmael in John Huston's Moby Dick, 1956. His career bridged Hollywood and European art house cinema, a rarity for American actors of that era. In 1962, he played Hitler in a film bearing that title. In 1964, he became Admiral Nelson, but Basehart's private life was full of pain. His first wife, Stephanie Klein, died in 1950 of a brain tumor while he was in the middle of shooting 14 Hours. He forced himself to finish the film. His second wife, Italian actress Valentina Cortese, left him in 1960, returning to Italy with their young son, Jackie. For months, Basehart called her in Rome, and she never picked up. His close friend Warren Stevens lived nearby to make sure the actor was never alone. It was a quiet, private collapse. In 1962, he married for a third time, a woman named Diana Lotery. Together they founded an animal welfare organization called Actors and Others for Animals. He remained with Diana until his death. In 1984, Basehart read poetry at the closing ceremony of the Summer Olympic Games in Los Angeles. The next day, his first stroke. Richard Basehart died on September 17, 1984, in Los Angeles, following a series of strokes. He was 70. His ashes were scattered over the Pacific Ocean, the very ocean into whose depths he had dove each week as Admiral Nelson. He did not merely play an admiral, he was one. The submarine Seaview existed only on screen, but the men who inhabited it, they were real, and their lives turned out to be far more complex, far more painful, and far more beautiful than any fantastical storyline the series ever produced. Henry Kulky died at his desk. Paul Trinka, from brain cancer at 41. Arch Whiting chose the mountains and silence. Del Monroe worked the night shift at a brewery and never told a soul who he had been. Robert Dowdell fed stray cats in a small Michigan town. Alan Hunt went to war instead of shooting. Richard Basehart recited poetry at the Olympics. And the next day, a stroke cut him down. David Hedison outlived his wife and carried that loss alone for 3 more years. This is not merely the story of a television series. It is a story about how time spares no one. Not sailors, not captains, not admirals. And yet, these men left their mark in every frame, in every episode, in every memory held by viewers who watched the Seaview as small children, and who are now grandparents themselves. Leave a comment. Which of the actors surprised you most? Whose story made the deepest impression on you? Where are you from? And did you watch this series as a child? If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. We tell stories about the people you loved on screen and who they really were. Until next time.